Hi there and welcome back to the M5Stack official channel. I'm Luke and this is the second video in the series about the Faces kits. In the last video I said we only had 6 different Faces kits. I was wrong. We actually have 7. Even I can't keep up with how many new M5Stack products are coming out. To introduce them again, we have the Faces encoder, RFID reader, calculator, game player, keyboard, fingerprint scanner, and the joystick. You may know that we're doing a competition right now where you can win yourself some Faces kits. You can also be in the chance of winning a $300 coupon for our store. The competition is still going to be running until August 15th, so you still have plenty of time. To join the competition, check the link down in the description. Okay, for this video, I'm going to be programming the Faces joystick kit. It's perfect for making a game. And the game that came to my mind was the classic Simon game from the 70s and 80s. If you're too young to remember that, basically you get a series of arrows. You have to follow the combination of those arrows to win the game. If you get the combination wrong, it's game over. Let's see how we can program it. Here we are in Uiflow. Remember, we need to be in the beta version as only that has the Faces modules included. And you should have version 1.3.4 firmware installed on your M5Stack. Okay, so first let's have a look at what kind of blocks we have inside joystick. Pretty common here. You can get the X value of the joystick, the Y value. If the central button is pressed, you can get those values in reverse. And then finally we can set the LEDs around the joystick to turn on whatever color we want. A note about the positions: 0 is left, followed by down being 1, right 2, and then finally up is 3. So initially, before we start messing with these, we're going to set a few variables for our game. Firstly, I'm going to create a list to hold the different directions. Okay, so we'll go down into lists. We're going to need a couple of these lists, so I'm going to grab that, and then I'm also going to grab some empty lists. Okay, so I'll just need one extra position. Okay, and then we start to set these left for each of the different directions, of course. And now we have a list that we can draw from a random position and then assign it into our sequence. So that sequence is initially going to be an empty list. We're going to call that sequence. Okay, and then we'll also need an empty list for our current input, because we're going to compare. If our input is the same as the sequence, then we will win. If we didn't input correctly and it's not the same as the sequence, then we lose. Okay, so 2 empty lists to start off with, and then to check whether we're in the playing state or we're in the demoing state where we're seeing the sequence and trying to remember it, we'll create a boolean. So I'm just going to call this is playing. Okay, and initially I will set that to false, because the initial setup of the game will just be watching that screen, making sure that we get whether it's left or right or down or whatever we need to press. Make sure I set that to that boolean. Cool. Okay, and then we're going to use our loop here, and then I'm going to have 2 separate while loops. The initial one will be the watching face, and the second one will be the playing face. Okay, so while playing is false, and then while playing is true. Okay, so initially what we want to do is we're going to be using these emojis quite a lot. So we'll need to create one for each of the directions. I'm just going to speed this up now because this takes a little bit of time. Okay, and there now I have all of my different emojis for the different directions. Now unfortunately in Blockly I cannot just directly assign a emoji to a variable. That would be a lot more convenient because then I could just set variables in here instead and set these for left, up, down, right, whatever. So what I'll need to do actually is I'm going to need here this if, and create a bunch of else ifs. Okay, and now to add a random direction for every loop, we're going to use this block here in list. So in our list, which is sequence, we're going to insert at the last position a random element from this list. So we'll use maths random, and then we're going to need these get blocks as well. That's it, because we're going to be grabbing a random element from the list elements and then placing it in sequence. Okay, so as many of you will know, lists don't start from 1. This is 0, 1, 2, 3. So my random integer should be from 0 to 3. And then it's going to be adding these. So now in our logic, if I want to show the corresponding emoji, I have to check if it's equal to left. Okay, well I forgot something here. We need to use a for loop. Okay, that's it. So okay, yes, so I'm going to need this for each item in the list. So j is this new variable that's been created, which will correspond to each new element in the list. So if j is equal to left, then of course we stick the left facing arrow in there, and so on. Okay, this is how our program is looking so far. I just realized something. I should have put this inside this while loop. Okay, so right now this is going to generate those random elements from the list and then display the corresponding emoji on the screen. I feel like I should have something to tell the player to start, to get ready. So I'm going to add this title in here and then go into its corresponding blocks. I want to make sure it gets shown at the very start of the loop. Okay, and then when we start, we're going to get it to display get ready. And something we need to be aware of as well is that when these change, we don't have any delay in here. So I'm going to put this timer in here. Let's set this for, say, 300, I guess. And then I'll set there to be a blank emoji before we skip into the playing mode. And then, of course, I'll need to set is playing to true. And then also, before this loop starts, I should set a slight delay so that we have time to see the very first emoji in the sequence. And also add another wait to help the player have time to get ready. Okay, that's looking good now. Oh, and also you may have noticed that we have backgrounds on the emojis, so we can also set these over here. At the start of the loop, I can set it to maybe, let's say, background 4. You can test to see which background you like best. Okay, so that's pretty much it for our starting loop. Now that's going to keep adding into the list. Now, once we've changed to true, we'll get into this list, where we need to check for input from the player. So I'm going to use another bunch of if-else ifs. So now we're going to need from that Faces keyboard blocks, get the X value and check whether it's facing to the left or facing to the right, up, down, etc. So I've already tested these values, and I'm just going to be putting in the values that worked for me. If you want to check this, you can also always start a new program, set up a loop and then a label on the screen, and then get the label to show the X and Y values, and then you can check to make sure that you're not going to get triggered in the dead zone, or if you want it to be only halfway press on the left or halfway press on the right, etc., then you can try that. But I'm just going to put these values in that work for me. So let's see, not equals, less than. So if get value is less than 300, then in the list, there we go, insert at the last position of input. Okay, so now this is the input list, which later we're going to compare to the sequence list, and make sure that if they are equal, then you're a winner. If they're not, then you messed up and you lost. Okay, and okay, I think we need to go to the top now and copy these down here. I'll just duplicate this and then drag them out. Okay, so this one will be left, this first one, and then I'll just duplicate this for each of the directions. So as we're going through, since Simon is a very colorful game, of course you could add in your LED positions as well. So if you get the left direction, set the left facing LED. And then of course you would have to make a delay and then set it to black to turn it off, to make sure the LED doesn't stay permanently switched on. But for sake of simplicity and time, I'm going to do the very bog standard version of this. Okay, so now we'll switch to the Y values for up and down. Okay, and then we're inserting that, and then we also want to show the different emojis. So I'm going to have to copy these down here. And then what can happen here is when you're moving your joystick, and when you turn it left, right, whatever, it can tend to register more than one left press or one right press, even though you've only pressed it across once. So a way to avoid this is just to add a small delay in between each of those. So I'm going to make that about 200 milliseconds. And that's it for our inputs. But now obviously what we need to do is to compare. If those lists are equal, then we win. If they're not equal, then we lose. And we reset the game. So I'm going to add in an extra else if, and then go into my logic blocks. I'm going to need this one and this one. Okay. So firstly, to check if we've won is pretty easy. All we need to do is check if our list input is equal to our list sequence. Okay, and then if that is so, then we can set our title to say something like "You win." Okay, and then I think it would be nice if we had a little nice sound in there, like a higher sound, happy sound, to say we've won. Okay, we'll stick a high C in there, and then a little bit of a delay before we start the next round of the game. Allow the player a little bit of time to rest and get ready for the next round. And then what we'll need to do then, to avoid any confusion, is every time we need to reset input back to an empty list. So then we can get ready to input the directions for the next round. And then of course we'll have to set that variable for the playing state. We'll set it back to false, so the demo part of the stage will appear again. Okay, now for if we didn't make the right if we didn't put the right input in there, I'm going to check if this is not equal. Okay, so we'll get those variables again, input and sequence, and then we'll get length of. So we need to wait until sequence is the same length as input. So yes, input sequence not equal to, okay, means we put in something wrong, and this one is just to make sure that we get chance to fill in all of the directions, and we don't put any more in than necessary. So then for our big game over label, we're going to set a nice big label here. Okay, and then we'll clear the screen and then have a big foreboding game over title there. Label, not title, sorry. And then give it a few seconds before our game starts again. Okay, and then there's a few things we need to remember. Of course, we'll need to reset the input, but this time we'll also need to reset sequence as well, since we're starting afresh from the beginning. And of course, we need to set playing is false. Okay, that should be all for now. Let's double check. Oops, I just realized that I've missed something very vital out of this code. If we go back up, you'll notice here that I haven't actually specified in which list to check or in which list to display from. Okay, so I need to make sure that sequence is there. Okay, it would definitely not have worked if I didn't have that in there. Okay, let's test again, make sure that works. Oh, I was having way too much fun there, sorry. I hope you enjoyed this video and you were able to make the Simon game. You could try and make it harder by adding a delay in there for decreasing the time between the patterns, so then it's harder to remember. You could try changing other things about the program. Whatever you do, make sure you leave a comment down in the comment section, like, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.